have a Bigfoot story, and the writer wants to be anonymous. I grew up in the mountains of Pennsylvania. Our land bordered the game lands, which meant we never saw people. We had no neighbors within eyesight or earshot, and if one of those faraway neighbors were out shooting, you could barely hear the shot. My parents' log cabin was at the bottom of the valley down a long, winding mountain road, and about 10 feet past the barn was Bear Hollow, a 3.5-mile dirt track for riding horses with 50 feet of meadow on both sides. The sunshine couldn't penetrate the woods, and the temperature dropped a good 15 to 20 degrees as soon as you entered. I grew up in an abusive household. At one point, things got so bad that when I was 11 years old, I decided to sleep in the barn at night with our 2 horses. It may not have been the fanciest of accommodations, but it was okay with me, and more importantly, I felt safe there. 2 weeks into this routine, I had an especially bad day. I was in the barn and crying silently, telling my horses about what had happened, when from a shadow it felt like a draft horse exhaled loudly right onto me. It wasn't scary or alarming, but the enormity of that single random breath did get my attention. I sat still and I listened, but I heard nothing else. The next night, the same thing happened. Late into the night, I felt a huge breath exhale. It sounded like when a horse settles or when a dog finally gets to lie down and takes that last big breath to clear his mind. Except that it didn't come from either of the horses, and there were no other animals in that barn. This continued every night for about a month, until one night, along with the big breaths, I heard what could only be described as a chicken sounds coming from a large creature. It sounded like 2 enormous creatures clucking and cooing and purring at the same time. It was the most unique sound, and when I heard it, I felt better, as if whatever was making the sounds was trying to soothe me. Being visited by these mysterious animals became the best part of my day. I would leave sweet grain and oats and apples and silly little girl things like a dream catcher for them. In return, I would spend the evening comforted by their presence. And my mother became upset that I was sleeping in the barn because she thought I was disturbing the horses. So I moved inside the house again, but as soon as it was light out, my dog Autumn and I would run to the woods on my property and in Bear Hollow, and we would hear the usual knocks in the woods and the ruffed grouse startling from their hiding spots. One day we were on our walk, and it was business as usual. I had a horse lead on Autumn, and because of our previous day's walk, she had darted away, and it took me forever to hunt her down. When I finally got her, she was acting odd, and I wanted to keep her close, and I thought she may have found a bear. We were deep in the woods, and I had the lead choked up so that she wouldn't split us in the trees, and all of a sudden, Autumn yelped in fear, and she stopped dead. Right then, a deer carcass was flung at us. I looked at the animal at our feet, looked up again, and stared in awe at the creatures in front of me. There were 2 of them, and both of them were female. One was about my height, and the other was well over 8 feet tall. They were wide and solid, and their arms were longer and much more muscular than mine, and they had reddish-brown hair all over them with green highlights on their shoulders and heads and arms like moss was growing there. But it was the eyes of the taller one that stopped my heart. She was looking at me with what I can only describe as an apology. Now, don't ask me how, but it was clear to me that she was sorry she almost hit me with the deer. Her eyes were so expressive that I felt it in my soul. She made a familiar cooing sound at me, and my heart melted. Immediately, all those sad, lonely nights in the barn came back to me. I was looking at the reason I was still sane. She had watched over me and protected me for years. It was like she was conveying feelings of sameness and togetherness, like I was equal with her. Well, my heart was full, and I expressed gratitude and love, and the larger one expressed the feeling of being a part of a pack and that I was her honorary pup. I'm not embarrassed to say that my eyes teared up. She made a final huff and then turned around and glided gracefully away with the smaller one. My heart ached when I couldn't see them anymore. I left home a few months later and I never went back. I'm 39 years old now and I have not spoken to my parents in 20 years. I guess because of COVID, my mother felt the need to finally call me. Somehow, though, I never told her about my encounters with the Sasquatch, and she knew about it. She told me they had been stalking her and that while there seemed to be a lot of them around the house, one in particular went out of its way to scare her. For all the terrible things I went through under that roof, all I could think of was good. I know it was my friend of the forest from long ago and that she has not forgotten or forgiven the things that my mother did to me. I can't speak for all of these beings, but the Sasquatch family I had encounters with has an eye for an eye thinking. I was kind and loyal, and so were they. However, if you are unkind or cruel, they can show that kind as well. Their personalities are as varied as our own. They have lives that matter to them as much as ours matter to us. And somehow I feel like they are waiting for us to catch up and figure it out. Thank you for giving me an outlet to share my story. My 2 sons and I avidly watch and listen to your program, and if you choose to share this, I'm grateful, as they will be tickled to death. We are huge supporters, and we appreciate each and every encounter you share, and we are proud to be your people. God bless you. Oh my gosh, if you like these stories, you have found your people, and this was a wonderful story. You know, we all like the violent, shoot 'em up, Sasquatch almost kill me kind of stories. Man, I like these just as much. It's a redeeming, it gives these creatures some kind of redeeming quality. And a lot of people who hear this will go, yeah, oh yeah, I knew that all along. But you know, I can understand people running up on them in the woods and being terrified and wanting to shoot, or just for fear that, you know, you've got this massive beast standing in front of you, and the first thing you think is, this thing's going to kill me. But through the years, as I've done this podcast, I find more and more that these creatures are, for the most part, a little more compassionate with children. And I've gotten a couple of stories where kids have grown up in hard households, and the Sasquatches seem to take their side and do little things to comfort them. And it's very cool. They're very cool stories, and these events are uncanny in the scope of these stories. It's not often I get these, but when I do, I like to read them. So thank you to the writer, and I hope the kids enjoyed hearing it. I see I've got your email address. I don't normally email people when I've got her email address. I don't normally email people when I just don't have time. I don't have time to send out emails, several times a week, but I'll send this person an email, let her know it's going to be up tonight on the podcast. So thank you all for listening, and we'll see you guys on the next one. Thanks.